Good morning, everybody. It's Marty, the JavaScript party, and my buddy Rhett. She's been really super vocal this morning. I'm not sure what she is up to, but I'm going to give her her nut, her almond. Go, girl. And see if that makes her happy. So we have been working on aspect ratio, and basically the aspect ratio always is always 1 unless we're in one view, and that's the edit view. And then the aspect ratio should be like calculated based on the space available. So we've kind of been bouncing back and forth, and I was thinking through things yesterday. And let's see, in our ThreeJS section, so outside of our components, so interfaces. Oh yeah, so it is in our services, and then we have kind of two areas. We have a 3 area, but inside of here, we have a change in camera service. And basically, what it does is it um, calculates the aspect ratio, and then it calls this camera update matrix. Now, like, okay, so when I kind of first slayed this aspect ratio dragon, the aspect ratio was being set, like, I can't even remember where, but like in one of a whole other section. And I was like, oh man. And then this camera, ThreeJS camera project projection matrix call was over there too. And it was like, oh man, we should, this logic should not be in, um, should be only inside of the 3 area. It shouldn't be outside the 3 area. And then obviously this assignment should be happening inside the 3 area. It shouldn't be happening outside. But this calculation that I just decided out of nowhere just to slide in right here, that shouldn't be in the 3. The 3 should just do. It shouldn't calculate things unless it absolutely has to calculate things. We should definitely strongly shy away from that. So determining, and the only reason that came up is because then I thought, oh man, while I'm in edit mode, I'd like to run the. I would like to. On the in the UI, I want to surface what the actual aspect ratio is. But if I'm calculating the actual aspect, um, aspect, um, if I'm actually calculating that here, there's no way to effectively sort of pipe that out. Now, in the original version of this application, I thought to myself that I wanted to like always use 3 um, as my source of the truth, but and that would make sense here because then I could just say, okay, well, when I want to know the actual uh, camera, I can just ask ThreeJS for it. But that isn't actually true. Not so. There are definitely things that ThreeJS properties that they don't store, um, and there's no way to get to them. Like, and the classic one for me is for a camera. What the look at is, you tell it what to look at, and then the look at is no longer calculated. It has no idea what it's looking at. Um, then there's also examples of information that only ThreeJS knows, and then and so that would have to be um, like um, surface some way. So I do need a way for ThreeJS to sort of publish out specific ThreeJS, um, but um, basically the point is the biggest takeaway in all this is ThreeJS shouldn't be calculating what the aspect ratio is. So basically, since we know that, and um, I'm having a hard time picturing exactly where this gets called. I believe it gets called from the 3 service, the 3 renderer service. Um, but to me, the easiest way to to sort of is this easiest way to sort of figure out where I need to make changes is just to ask, just to change it and then see where it breaks. The transpiler does a really good job of that for us. I think I'll just call it aspect since that's all anything else calls it. Alright, so when I hit save, what'll happen is this will break and it'll tell me. Okay, so it's saying that ST render service 92 line 65 96. I think this is line 96 column 65. So if I go like this, I can hold it. I believe I can hold the shift button down and click that, and it'll take me there. Yep. So it's line 96. So just to get things working again, this is not what we want to do, but and we're no better off here because how would we ever get to that information? But now let's just make sure it works. Yep. So it still works. If it didn't work, like had I reversed it, it would have. It would be really wonky. Guess there is some value to, like, it's kind of funny. I like to look at these things and broken and stuff, and I think it's because in the future I'm trying to say, like, if let's say these two did get inverted for some reason, I'd like to be in a position to be like, oh, I've seen that before. Oh, the aspect ratios are reversed. Yeah, see, so since I have them reversed, and so if you notice that, and this is the first time I ever made this observation, but they're identical. So yeah, that would be if the space that it's in is the identical to the shape that you're looking at, if those two shapes are identical, that's a classic. That's actually an absolute tell that the aspect ratio has been reversed. And I could see that being a bug all the time, especially now that we're passing it in. All right, so now we're in the ST renderer service, and I want would like this calculated aspect ratio to be stored, but this is just one of many objects. I guess maybe we should add a calculated aspect ratio. Yeah, that communication scheme that I was talking about that would come from the ThreeJS back is going to be pretty complicated because somehow it has to give enough information that to know which, like we have more than one rendering going at one time, and it's like which one, like whatever we send back is going to have to also have some way to determine the renderer. But okay, so we moved this aspect ratio to here. And then divided by height. Well, it's updated. Oh, it gets its width and height. So update ask. Okay, so this gets called here anytime we render it, and we give this guy an offset element. We give this guy an actual element that he goes off of. But I'm guessing that aspect ratio also gets somewhere else. I'm just going to do a control F. Nope, there's only two of them. Okay, so I want, okay, so so the mission is to render this on the screen, this width and height, which is a bit complex already. But then um, we like, so what we could do is we could have like a oh, this wrong place. All the way up here at the top, we could have like a variable, like a public variable, or we could have a private variable and a getter and a setter that says like oh, see how we have size? It could be like aspect, calculated aspect ratio. And that's a number. Service. And we're just going to default it to 1 since that's what our default is. And that seems like that makes sense, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because this is a service that's being used by every visualization. So if I have 16 different visualization, this service is the same service for all 16 of them. So this calculated aspect ratio wouldn't be for any one of these. It would be for whatever the last one it decided to calculate its stuff for. So that doesn't. So that makes things a lot more complicated. And that's why we can't just like store it and then just draw it on the screen. Well, and then what's really weird is that it would work at first because we just happen to have one. When we're the only time we really care is while we're in edit mode, and while we're in edit mode, we only have one rendering. But like, let's say in the future we said, oh, I want to be able to render, I want to be able to look at two of them at one time and work on them independently, then the whole system would break. And not only that, but it would be a foundational, like, change something, some code that we built in the very very most basic layers, and then built a bunch of stuff around it, and then we need it to expand. And so it would be a really, like, the potential for things to get pretty messed up seems very high if we just do. I have no idea why I always have that n. So we would want, and I guess we already have our renders dictionary, right? So, and a renderer only has one. Yeah, only has one thing. So maybe that's where. Okay, so when we get renderer by ID, see, we go into this dictionary and we get our renderer. And it seems like the calculated aspect ratio could be put in here, I think. And so, and you might be thinking to yourself, like, man, why not just keep rolling forward? We don't need to do this right now. It's like, well, because, like, sure, we might be able to shoehorn this in later and all that, and that would probably be kind of an interesting thing. Like, you don't get many opportunities to move through code this slowly. So like you, there's certain things that are just easier to pay attention to when you're moving, when you're just sort of marching forward. So anyways, it seems like in our ST renderer, we want to add like the calculated aspect ratio. And so, and that's a number, and it's not required. But okay, so but think through the so think through this. This is an interesting one because I see this kind of thing happen all the time. Okay. So we're storing a number along with the renderer, which which is whatever the calculated active um, uh, what is it aspect ratio is, right? So we're doing that, and that's fine. Um, Now in the future, so we're in a trap. We are in a trap where it's like one of these things where that down the line that you're going to be criticized for this decision, and there's neither decision is work. There's only two choices to go here from here, and both of them end in criticism. So you just have to get used to that. But one is we only have one item. So since there's only one item, it makes sense just to that we're tracking here. Um, it makes sense just to add that as a new attribute. But we're very likely going to want to sort all kinds of calculated things in the future. And if that happens, we're really going to want this to be like calculated values, and then of type, and then so like this calculated, like we would create an interface, and it would be called like calculated values, and then it would have like AR number, and then camera C look at number, right? Like we would maybe want to do that, and if that was the case, then what we'd want to do is we'd want to be like this, and then like this, and then we could call this like 3 values, or calculated values. We probably would want to call it like 3 or something like that, so that we know that it's from like that. So this, both are like, I think you just don't know. You don't know which one's going to be the better one to do. And the reason you don't know is because I'm kind of just guessing that there's going to be more, but there may not. And then you end up building this extra layer of abstraction, which makes it a little bit more difficult to sort of reason about for nothing. And people are only going to notice, your coworkers and all that are only going to notice when when it goes wrong. So let's say you decided to go this direction, and then in 3 years, literally the only thing we ever have is the AR, because the AR is weird, right? The I guess you'd want to do this. Why am I having such an aspect ratio? I keep wanting to call it array. Like every time I go, then the word array comes into my head instead of aspect. Right? Like so I guess I will go like this, right? Just I'm assuming that. But in 3 years, if all there is one, it's just like, see, this guy overcomplicates everything. Everything, like if he does anything, he overcomplicates it. Or if you ended up needing 10 different kinds, it's like, oh man, see, this guy never thinks ahead, right? There's no winning. There's sometimes that you have to go in, you just have to do your work, and then you just have to be ready for when the inevitable um, criticism comes. It's just the nature of the game. And I'm not saying that you have to like grow a thick skin or something like that. You just have to uh, like take it for what it is. And what it is just like um, hindsight's 2020. And that's probably like the best you could say. Um, but anyway, so we have our calculated values, and we only have, I don't know why I always want to put an end there at the end. Anytime, I think it's like if I have a TIO, I don't know, I think the vast majority of words I use, if there's a TIO, it ends with an N. So I must have that like just hardwired into my typing. But anyway, so here we have our calculated values. It's optional. And then I guess it would make, and it's in the ST area. So I feel like it's okay to surface ST things to the UI. So I don't want to surface anything from the model, from ThreeJS directly in the UI. I would rather it kind of come through the ST side to go back. All right, so render service is now the one that so now it makes sense to say const aspect ration equals width divided by height, and then st renderer. So now we have, so this is how we end up getting like if we have 15 of them, we get it attached to the correct one. So now it's upset because like it may not exist. And in this case, it actually doesn't. So we're going to say that, and we're probably going to want to break this into another, like I'm just instantly, and this is new, this is a new involvement, but I'm probably going to want to break this immediately into another function because branches are very difficult to, functions overflow. This is an example of, so we're going to say this. So we're going to say, hey, if it exists, now I don't understand why. Okay, so TypeScript is smart enough to say, okay, well, he's checking for it here. He's adding, I think I had never heard this word until maybe 8 years ago. So, like 1/5 of the time I've been coding. But this is, a lot of people call this a guard. So this is guarding against this. It's like this. I'll just make one. I have no idea why I did it that way. I lost my S. So okay, so I mean, okay, so for the explanation purposes, so I could do that, right? I could say create a function with the name aspect ratio and the value aspect ratio. I don't know, back, I don't know, about 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, they made it, they added a shortcut where you go, you can, instead of having both, you have that. Now, what I'm saying here is to create a whole object and then assign my piece. Otherwise, I said, hey, if there's one there, just update my piece only. Don't update everything. So this clearly needs to go into its own unit, right? So that it'll be easier to unit test. Um, and probably there will be other long-term benefits. So anyway, so like, yeah, so on the ST side, what we really, really want is all the calculations that are going to be for our visualizations, and we want all of the any data that we're going to surface to the UI. And then in the model, I mean, in the ThreeJS side, in the 3 side, that's where we want anything that's just updating to or reading from ThreeJS. But like, um, if it's going to go to the visual, like, if it's going to go to the UI, it really needs to go somehow be wired into the ST section. Because the UI really will stay a lot less complicated if we can not make it have to understand how ThreeJS works. Um, like I say all the time, like, I mean, honestly, like, ThreeJS is like, you know, like I, if I say one thing negative, I feel compelled to say 3 things positive, because like it's just so amazing, you know. It's just like really, really great. I'm definitely, I guess, what the kids would call a 3JS fanboy. But um, there are certain decisions that they made that don't really take in consideration certain things that I care about. So the 3 side is, the ST side is the way I wish it to be, and the 3 side is the way it is. And the way I wish it to be is going to be a lot easier to render on the screen than the way it is, because the way it is pretty complicated, and a bit inconsistent from the perspective of someone who's trying to write HTML on the screen, right? It may be totally consistent based on some sort of training like that filmographers get and stuff like that. Maybe that's, you know, maybe it maps to some other deeper reference, but it's very, the way that they change how the mechanisms on the way things work, and is makes it really, really difficult to show it on this in the, like, the actual values, without tons and tons of edge case coding. So anyways, and that was me more thinking out loud to myself, like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. But it's because I want this value, and I'm pretty sure I have access to the ST renderer from my component. All right, so we are leaving ST world and moving into component world, and we're seeing if we have an access, if we have access to this service. Because if we do, then and if we're already using it, we might already be using it, then we actually know we have all the data we need, I think. Yeah, because I'll have the renderer over there. So let's just close their service down. Yeah, we're closing services down, and we are moving interfaces. And as I've been saying, I've been really, really making a lot of effort to try to um, consider things from a perspective of like architectural, like this system can only communicate to this system over here, as opposed to this little guy does this little guy does that. You know what? If I wanted this little guy to, if he needs to be able to do information, he can just get it from wherever. Like more like try to think of things in more like big blocks of code that cross shouldn't run across each other. Um, and I have another project that I work on in the evenings, if I have time in the evenings, and that one I'm doing the back end as well, and I'm trying really hard to think through everything. And man, is back end a lot easier if you think about it in big blocks as opposed to individual units of work. It's wild. So, anyways, we're thinking that the layout and the app update layout needs to have access to that data. Yeah, see, aspect ratio is. So this guy does not have direct access, but he does. Okay, he does not have direct access to. This is really neat the way I did this. Let's see. Oh, okay. He doesn't know anything. He is absolutely he. I thought this side over here was a bit more mature than it is. Okay, so all of the intelligence um, of how to get information about the component, about the visualization, is in the component itself, in the viz layout. So if we come over here, like all the brains of this is on that, and it's probably using this value to determine um, how to get the how to get the right visualization. So we want the visualization over here, and we may not even want it here. Okay, so this is, so now I have to think, okay, within components, yes, this is the component section, but within components, what do I want? And I do like how this parent sort of holder component doesn't know a damn thing about this, and I would probably like it to not know a damn thing about the editor stuff. It's become very clear that editor is going to be a bit more complicated, or it's going to have to be complicated. So maybe I only want this, like, so the way I've envisioned the editor working is that there's going to be like tabs, and that probably needs to um, needs to be its own component. That's going to be a lot of complexity, and so if it doesn't have to, if I can sort of isolate that complexity into its own component, that would be a good thing. So I do think that the next thing is, and this is kind of crazy because I really wanted to tie off um, this the current part of the aspect ratio before. Yeah, I really want to tie that off before I really get rolling on edit. So I don't want to do this, but so I'm going to end up pulling in some code and doing it in a way, like pulling in code and getting ST stuff in a way that then I'm going to want to undo, because I really don't want that sort of intelligence happening at this level. Um, uh, so, but for now, I do need to pull in the um, service. see, I'm trying to think in a different way. So normally what I would do is I'd go searching and I'd figure out exactly where I need to pull it from. But I'm trying to remember and just think of it, visualize it more like like I said, more like a place and less like a worker. Um, so in the services, there's an ST side. So I want it from the ST side, and I remember it was the ST has sections, and I know that in the renderer, so I think it's the ST renderer. Um, so let's see if I can just do that. ST. Oh, it was renderer service, not renderer. And then okay, so our ST renderer service has the actual, can give me the actual so we have to remember the ST renderer service is, so if I add, these are three separate instances of renders, but they all shame this, they all share the same service. um, so this guy, all I have is access to the whole service, but I need what I would really like to have is access to the service for the ID. Um, so and then I want to set the aspect ratio based on that one. Man, that is so abstract. And so we have it all on this set timeout, which is kind of a bummer because, you know, like code is a little bit harder to sort of work with when it's like this. So I think what I want to do is try to turn this into another function. And I don't know, I may need to bind it to get it to work. And we will know it didn't work. The only way we'll know that this didn't work is if it doesn't stretch when we change. So I'm thinking ahead of, okay, how am I going to test the work I'm doing? Because it would be easier just to write this up. So I'm going to create a function, and it's going to called finalize initialization. And it's going to take this, and it's going to say after complete is equal to true. And actually, I guess if that never gets set to true, then it won't, when we go to the edit mode, it won't show at all. And then you did aspect ratio. I'm just going to set it to 0 to start. And see, this is the kind of thing that it doesn't like, that will cause like can cause that that error to show up that says like expression blah 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 blah. Is when you set this value to something and then you suddenly set it to something else. I truly don't understand that, what's happening there, but I definitely want to keep an eye on that. I just feel like I'm missing something, and I put an N at the end of that one. Ratio. Okay, so this is the point that I'm going to ask the service for a reference to my own self. st render, and that's going to be of type st render, and that equals this dot st render service, not minus, equals dot get render by ID, and then ID. And I don't know. Oh, this ID. Good job, IDE. So the ID that gets passed in, that's the renderer. And then, so we want to get our renderer. Dot calculated values dot aspect ratio equals other way around. For some reason I thought I was setting it there, which is crazy. Equals this dot st render. No, not service. I have my render, but it's not of this. And what it knows is that it might not exist. Which we will probably want to break this into its own little function. But for the moment, so it didn't want to let me because it was like, hey, you know, aspect ratio, or the calculated whole calculated values object may not even exist. And I know I like to return something. Boolean. And then let updated equals false. Return updated. Again, I don't know if this is going to have a lot of long-term benefits. The only reason I'm setting this up as a Boolean instead of a void is because I know that life gets, it just makes the unit tests look nice, look better. And so basically, I'm going to assume that if we got in here, updated is equal to true, that everything worked famously. Okay, so now I've done my finalize initial. Oh, I haven't actually called it though. But nothing broke, so that's good. And so I think I want to do this. Oop. Yeah, let's just move this into its own line so it's a little easier to sort of contend with. So this is the whole function. This dot finalize. So we'll see if that works. Because like I said, I believe the way this works, we won't even get one. We won't be able to see it once we're in edit mode. Uh-oh. Oh, we have that. So it didn't work at all. Yeah, I think I have to bind it. So because it's the property of undefined. So if I reading get renderer by ID. Okay, so let's just go change that back. So I was guessing that if I did this, that it would work, but now based on the errors that were shown to me, I don't think that is true. Okay, so this definitely is going to be a problem because there aren't any. No, it's still broken. Oh, okay, so I think that was just the, what was that? Okay, so apparently at some point it tried to calculate the um, undefined reading calculated values. So apparently it tried to calculate the aspect ratio at some point, and probably before it should have. Now I don't remember. Okay, so we need to figure out these bugs. I'm gonna go over here. So we don't have that problem here, right? I'm just gonna hit refresh, kind of get a fresh start. Add. And here's where things go sideways. What? Oh, I guess it's still stuck in the debugger. So it's saying, hey, I tried to find something and it was NAN, but then it became 1.56. And it said it was upset here on trying to write this. And that's weird. It feels weird. So that would give me the impression that if I just get, oh, yeah, no. Oh, so it's trying to do this in here. Oh, so we're actually going to need something along the lines of this. And as you could see, and I'm not going to drop in and drop out and think too deeply about this, but as you can see, the timing changed. Something changed in the timing. Things that were breaking aren't breaking now. Or things that weren't breaking before are breaking now. And that is something I've noticed about Angular in general is so I would imagine for every negative about this there's a positive about it, but like they are protecting you from a lot of issues of issues with timing, but during that protection you don't understand what's going on and things will just suddenly break and you really don't have a lot of power over that. um, but yeah, somehow I changed up all the timing in the application. um, let's go like this. Let's relead. Okay, so now, yeah, so the console errors are gone. It's kind of crazy because those things just come in at the worst time, the absolute worst time. But so now I have my calculated aspect ratio. So let's see if we can show that in the so that is funny because it says, hey, the aspect ratio, so this calculated ratio is 1, but it is actually 1 point. So I'm clearly not getting the actual true calculated aspect ratio because it was set to 0. So if it was just wrong, I mean, if it was just um, like it never got updated, then it would be 0, but it's 1, which is what it was before. Um, so it could just be a timing issue. And I think that the only thing this does is per- keep it, show it on the screen. So I think if we made this like 1 second, I'm curious if I make this 1 second. Let's go to this other page so it doesn't crash and burn. Okay, so now this is 1 second. Update. So clearly the calculated values aspect ratio is wrong. So I think I got a lot farther, a lot faster, thinking in sort of more big block ways. But it did make me like write a lot of code before I tried it. And so then if something goes wrong on that, it just takes a lot. So I have noticed that a lot of writers will write like code in like 10 different places. A lot of developers like 10 different places, and then they'll hit reset and then like, oh, that didn't work. And then they start looking in all the different places again. Um, and that sometimes that like you can just create very, very weird code that, or code with really strange errors in it that way. Um, and now I kind of understand. Well, okay, now I understand why those developers are like that. Why they hop around all over the place. I'm like more of like a trudge along, like, oh, okay, I figured this one a little out. So it's just like um, a different style, but I do think that like this is not working. So at this point, my other style will probably be a better style of, okay, work backwards. How is this getting set, and start understanding all those things. So I think being able to swap back and forth between the two styles of thinking may prove to be very valuable to me in the future. Anyways, yeah, it's 8:55. Time to work Tuesday. I'm not going to be able to make a video on Thursday because I am going into work, into the office, which should be fun. I really like my coworkers. Anyways, happy coding, everybody. Bye.